So if you guys are going to do this for 30 days, there's a couple of things that I want you to probably track. Number one is if I was to do this the first time, I would take a photo of myself. Another thing that I would track is how you feel. I think people don't track this, and I think they should, because it's nice to see that 7 days in, I just feel miserable. I'm not going to plan anything else that's stressful on top of that. In fact, I'm probably going to plan some things that are more joyful so it can offset that emotional turmoil that I consistently experience every time I do this. Cool. So let's go into your nutrition. What would Coach Keith eat if me and you had this competition of losing the most body fat in 30 days?
All right, so here it is. I think in this...
Why do some people seem like they can lose fat in like 30 days while others seem like they're struggling for the rest of their life? What if you can follow or model what they're eating? Would I get the same results? In today's episode, Keith and I are actually sharing our own personal examples on how we would approach 30 days if we wanted to lose the most amount of fat. Keith, welcome back, man.
Glad to be here.
How's jits? How's life? How's kids?
It's good, man. It's those three things are a lot, but it's going really well. It's a balancing act, but it's going well.
Good for you, man. We did some preparing. Last time we did no preparing. So we did some preparing. So this is going to be much shorter. We've been really experimenting with the 30-minute ones. You guys are busy. We're busy. And we want to make sure you guys are busy and healthy at the same time. So let's do it, man.
Let's do it.
Let's apply some context, because I think this can get really distorted. They're like, wait, is that a good thing? Let's start out there. Like, would you recommend this for everyone, or who would this apply to?
It's all context. I would say if you're a little bit more advanced and you kind of know your body, know how it works, know your habits, it could work for you pretty easily. I think also, even if you're not at that level, it could work for you because some people just need to see progress fast. And I think if you do some type of 30-day challenge, something a little bit drastic, you start to see the results faster and you can continue with the motivation. If you go on this perfect diet that's never going to make you uncomfortable, that's going to last 6 months, it's kind of hard to stay to the plan. So sometimes right off the bat, let's do something hard. Let's do something drastic for 30 days. I start to see my body change immediately, and then it's way easier to push through.
100%.
So it could work for advanced. It could work for just starting off. I think if you're ready and you understand what we're kind of about to talk about and the details behind it, then it could be for anyone.
And really quick, as you guys are listening to this, I think a lot of times these 30-day things, I actually only do it once a year. People have this perception that we do it like year round. And keep in mind, I only do it once a year because of just like what you said, it's very hard to sustain. And sometimes I like to have those massive results because, again, it can be very inspiring. It can be very motivating. And that's why I do it. And I can have a significant amount of discomfort for a very, very short period of time. And I feel good about it. Like I feel disciplined about it. But then prolonged period of time, then I get really miserable.
Right.
So
perfect.
So just guys, if you're listening to this, think of this as like literally 1 month out of your 12 months. And if you can execute this with this type of intensity, I think you'll get a ton of benefit from it.
For sure.
So let's do it. I know there's going to be the fitness side. I don't want to talk about the fitness side. I want to talk about what would you adjust nutritionally for this to have the best possible outcome for you. And we can kind of just ping pong back and forth.
Yeah, for sure. And I like starting there too, because there's really not much changes on the fitness side. Maybe like increasing steps.
Yeah.
Like that's it. But I think if you're already in a routine, you just got to focus on the nutrition for something like this.
Yes.
I wouldn't go crazy with the fitness stuff, because then if you put yourself in this, I'm under eating and I'm overtraining, then you're just not going to feel great. And maybe the motivation's not going to even be there halfway through, like 15 days in, halfway through the month, you're just going to be like, this is too hard. I can't do it.
What is the minimum frequency you think on the fitness end? Just so they give some context, like they should be training every single day, 3 days a week, 5 days a week. What do you think?
I think for you, a good starting place is almost kind of like, I remember when my wife got pregnant, like one of the rules that they give you is just like, don't do anything new.
Okay.
And I think it's kind of that idea. So if you're like a 3 time a week person, just like keep it. Keep it 3 times a week. If you're 4 time a week, keep it. If you're one of those people that like to do something every day, like just already keep what you're doing. And again, maybe those steps, just
Yeah.
like an extra step thing, just
Yeah.
to move a little bit more through the day. And that's not devastating. Like you're not going to wake up sore because you did more steps that day. So I'd say like whatever it is you're already doing, and then just really double down on the nutrition
I
for
like
those
that.
30 days.
Yeah. I like that because a lot of times some people will make two things too hard
Yes.
and it
Yep.
just becomes miserable, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. Changing your nutrition and adhering to this type of nutrition is plenty of hard. So I'm glad that you really emphasize that. For me, I think you should be training at least 3 for
Yeah.
you to see some sustainable changes.
Yeah.
For myself, I train every single day, right? So, and I wouldn't change really anything, but I would change one thing. I would change my routine in lifting heavier, because I notice when I go into these massive deficit cuts and moments where I'm actually trying to lose the most body fat, I'm not the strongest. And here's what happens. If I start to do a heavy lifting routine plus this, I get really sad because my numbers are not good enough.
We were gonna get to that for sure.
And if I'm not getting those numbers, then I have a tendency to eat the carbs again.
Yep.
I'm like super sad about it. I was like, oh, why am I even doing this? I'm going to go eat some ice cream. So right off the bat, I do shift focus towards more lighter loads and weights. My intensity is still pretty high. I'm still lifting, but I'm not maxing out in that 30 days. I think that's a big context that I've made a mistake before.
Yeah.
Like I'm still on a strength cycle.
Yeah, it's not the time to say, all right, I want to get as shredded as I can in 30 days, and I also want to hit my deadlift PR. Like, not a good time to kind of pair those goals together. So kind of just the first step is just planning it out. Just to make sure that things like conflicting goals don't kind of overlap with each other. Because if the goal is you want your body to change as much as possible, like don't worry about those heavy weights right now. Obviously, later you could add those goals back in, but stick with one thing at a time. And if it's body composition, biggest body changes, like who cares if your numbers go down a little bit?
Yeah.
Once you pass your 30 days and you get back to kind of like your normal eating, then you can worry about your numbers.
Yeah. And again, I'm not like saying it's not impossible to lose body fat and still get really, really strong, but it just hasn't worked for me.
It's because you're too much of a veteran. It newbie gains, of course.
Yeah.
And that's great if they work out for you, but as long as if you know that most people cannot do both at the same time,
it just sets the expectation, and you're not going to binge eat when you're not hitting your deadlift numbers again.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's go into your nutrition. What would Coach Keith eat if me and you had this competition of losing the most body fat in 30 days?
All right. So here it is. I think, and this is kind of like a rule that anyone that's kind of forming their own plan can think about. And I think of what personally I overeat because I'm a volume person. I like to eat a lot, and it's carbs. I'm just in the carb camp. If you told me to cut out carbs completely, I'm probably not going to like binge on fatty foods. Like it just doesn't, I can't do it. Some people can for sure, and they could eat too much fat and that's too much calories. But for me, it's the carbs. And probably what you're saying is the reason why. It's like, oh, it fuels my workout. I feel better. I have better rolls in jiu-jitsu. I could lift more. Like that's the reason that I love carbs so much. I think
just the dopamine release.
Yeah, and
massive
and
dopamine release.
And that. So for me, that's what if I were to overeat, it's going to be carbs. It's going to be an extra serving of rice or potatoes, something like that for me. So knowing that, I want to kind of eliminate that. So I'm not saying go like absolutely no carbs, but it's just like the one thing that I'm going to focus on reducing. I think you'll probably say the same thing too, but just in this type of drastic phase, keeping protein high, I think it's kind of a standard just to hold on to as much muscle as you have.
Yeah.
So keeping my protein high and manipulating my carbs.
Right.
as much as I can. Um, and then personally, I will throw in fasting on top of
Nice.
that, just to
Yeah.
shorten my window down.
Yeah. Are you talking about
Um,
like night fasting, or are you doing morning
I do
fasting for
morning.
you?
Yeah,
Why
I'll do
morning
morning.
then instead of night for you?
It's just easier for me. I usually wake up if I have some black coffee. I could buy
Hmm.
myself like a couple more hours
Yeah.
of eating. It's just
Yeah.
like something I did. I think maybe it's one of the first diets I ever tried was like a fasting sort of
Yeah.
keto-ish diet, and I just got used to that where I could push off breakfast and not eat, have my first meal until noon. I know some people struggle with that, but that's what I can do.
Hmm.
So as long as I'm shortening my eating window,
Hmm.
and I am being very careful about my carb intake.
Right.
So I'm a big fan of carb cycling.
Hmm.
So I will have like a high, medium, and low day. It's pretty easy for me to kind of manipulate that. If you want to go really drastic,
Yeah.
I could go a couple days with just
Vegetables and protein
vegetables and protein
and a little in fats,
and a little
whatever's
fat. But I
included in there.
usually eat enough like beef,
Meats.
turkey, where like the fat's just in there, and I'm
Yeah.
probably not going
Olive
below my
oil and all
yeah
that
yeah.
good
It's
stuff.
just
Yeah.
like I can if I go towards like nuts and
Hmm.
avocados and things like that. Like I think I could potentially add too much.
Yeah.
So just some people call it a protein fast,
Are
where
you
you're just
counting? Are you counting your protein in Keith's
in
diet?
this no.
Hmm.
No, I don't. Just because I've been doing it for long enough where
Hmm.
if I could lower my window to 3 days, 3 meals, I could be pretty,
Just
like,
eating protein.
yeah,
You're
pretty
using
spot
like a
on.
plate. You're like, oh, at least a third of it is
Yeah,
protein for
gram
me.
gram per pound usually comes out to. Um, so those are kind of just like the two things that I'll do. Now, another thing that I'll do is I'll try for once a week, and I've been doing these because it works out in my schedule on Sundays, where I'll try to do a 24-hour fast.
Hmm.
I have to pair it though, and I have to be smart. Usually works if I start like a Sunday afternoon
Yeah.
because of just like it's usually football season just ended, but if I have dinner at like 3, I know that sounds insane, but I could skip dinner that night,
Yeah.
basically watch football, and then that could carry me into the next morning.
Next
That
three
black
o'clock.
coffee the next Monday morning buys me a little bit more time, and then before I know it, it's almost 24 hours. So
Exactly.
that's just
Yeah.
a little hack that I've been using to kind of like just add a little bit of extra.
Yeah.
Because remember, this is drastic. It's not like I'm going to be doing this every single
Yes.
Sunday.
Hmm.
But for me is I used to do this for body composition, like, oh, I'm going on vacation. I want to get super shredded in 30 days. For me now, it's making weight for jiu-jitsu
Jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
competitions.
Yeah. It's an advantage too.
Yeah.
Big advantage.
Yeah. So it'll be drastic.
Hmm.
So it's just trying to even lower that deficit a little bit more with something like a 24-hour fast. Like I could pull it off once a week
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I still do that once in a while right
Hmm.
now.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Dude, lots of similarities.
Hmm.
But with the assumption that we were in a competition, let's
Hmm.
just say there's like $1,000 on the line. Guys, like as you're listening to my diet, don't be like, I'm going to do exactly what Royce
This is
does.
about to get real.
Yeah. So this is just me, and I've seen my body change in this way, and I've done it
Hmm.
multiple times. You've even seen me sometimes. You're like,
Yeah.
what are you doing, bro? Like you got like super shredded all of a sudden. It's because I actually did this for 30 days.
Hmm.
And I still do it once in a while if I really want to torture myself. I give up carbs. I actually
Completely.
have zero carbs. So all I eat is vegetables.
Hmm.
And the carbs from vegetables, sure, there's going to be some carbs in there. Maybe the dressing, there's going to be some carbs in there. And I also have protein. That's it. Protein, carbs. I have no fruits. It's straight vegetables and
Hmm.
protein, which is insane. Another big thing is I increase my protein intake because I get even more hungry because now
Oh yeah.
you're offsetting all this carbohydrates that are essential for just you to function, and all of a sudden you just remove half of
Hmm.
that. I just tend to I get extremely hungry. I get pretty lethargic throughout the day, so I increase my protein intake by like 2 more. So an example is I'll have 3 meals and I'll have a protein, a third of protein or a palm of protein for each of those meals. I'll go up to 5. So it's like I increase my serving. So I replace that carbohydrate essentially
Yeah.
with protein. So that's like a big thing for me, right? And another big thing is I do fast. But I already fast
Right.
throughout my life, but I do fast from my last meal is typically at like 6:30 or 7, and I don't eat again till 12. Right. So on occasion I do the 24-hour fast, but in this scenario, I wouldn't. I do
This
the
is a
20.
consistent fast every day.
Yeah, just consistent
Yeah.
fast every day. There's no need for me to go extreme like that unless I'm cutting weight for a competition.
Yeah.
I still love to train. I still love to eat. And some of the things I know right off the bat is I get really, really, really hungry the first 7 days. So I keep this in mind, guys. Like, it's not the most pleasant thing when you see every single person in your family eating carbohydrates and you're not
Yeah.
the only one.
Yeah.
Right? There's obviously the dopamine release from carbohydrates, but there's also the social release, like connecting with someone. You're eating bread. I think there's that part of it. So my mood typically isn't like it's not the most upbeat version of me, even though I
Yeah.
am default wise, I'm fairly upbeat. I'm more reserved. I like pull back a little bit. I'm not gonna dive in to help someone.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just gonna smile and give people like fist
But just for
bumps.
30 days.
But it's for 30
Yeah.
days,
And
so
to add to that too is like I'm sure you have not tried to do this like during the holidays or something like that. Like I
yeah,
think
yeah,
picking and
yeah,
choosing what time, like if you're a pretty organized person and you could look at your calendar and just be like, you know what, I don't really have much going on
yeah.
next month.
Socially, for
This is a
sure.
great time to do this.
Mm-hmm.
If you got vacations and friends coming into town or like the holidays are coming up, like I don't think being that guy that's sitting at the dinner table on Christmas and you're just like eating vegetables and meat and everyone's
Yeah.
like, yeah, like that's just gonna like if you have to do it during that time and you can, more power to you. But I
Yeah.
think like just removing as many obstacles as possible
Mm-hmm.
with this. And I think like a lot of people use this month,
Mm-hmm.
January, to do it.
Yeah.
Holidays are over. It's like this new start, this new days. Like if you live in a really cold place and you know you're not really going out and doing much, it's just
Mm-hmm.
kind of working out and eating. Like I think finding a good time to do it
Yeah.
will kind of set you up for success even more.
I mean, if you're doing it December, you're gonna be shredded when it's like super cold outside.
Yeah, and then you can't take your shirt off. So
But if you're not doing it
yeah,
for
yeah,
anyone, go for it. I've actually done some of the 30 days during December,
yeah.
primarily
I
because
knew
I
you have.
actually have more time.
Mm,
It works really well for me. And I also just stay focused because when my mind is like idle, I can get into like some really dark places. So I'll just throw it on there.
mm.
But yeah, I agree with you. I think placing it into
I'm actually the opposite.
and
I
yeah,
need to be busy.
yeah,
I need to be really busy
for you to
to
do
not
this.
think about eating.
Oh yeah.
So I like to be busy.
Yeah, when I'm not busy, I train more. I train harder,
Yeah.
which is really cool,
Yeah.
right? So I can leverage that energy. So it's good. Like you'll notice as me and Keith kind of talk about this, we've done this a few times to know
Mhm.
where we're going to be the most successful. I think that is a key point to this. Like I wouldn't put it when you have like 4 of your kids have birthday parties.
Yeah.
You know, actually, I'm not very social during Thanksgiving and also Christmas, and I just know that about myself. I'm just with my family more.
Mhm.
I'm not out there going to parties. Everyone has like 5 Christmas parties.
Yeah, it's
I
like
no, I
yeah.
say no to a lot of those, primarily because I can't control myself,
Same.
and I'm in the chips and salsa bar eating chips and salsa the whole time.
Mhm.
So let's talk about how this would feel like
Yeah.
emotionally. Like, are you affected emotionally? Is it not?
Yeah. I think
So,
what you said, it's like that first 7 days,
mhm,
that first week, like and each day just does get a little bit easier.
mhm.
For me, it's like just that first day
Yeah.
is awful.
Mhm.
It's kind of just because it's such a like dramatic shift.
Yeah.
So that first day is the hardest, and then each day just gets a little bit easier.
Mhm.
And then once you start to get about halfway through, like what and I said we say 30 days right now just because it's sometimes it's not even 30 days. Like it could be a little longer, it could be a little shorter, depending on kind of what. But
Yeah.
once you get closer to the end and
It
you're
actually
like,
gets
I'm already
easier.
halfway through. Like then
Yeah.
it gets easier because you know you're already halfway. The
Mhm.
first week, first couple days, definitely be uncomfortable, but knowing like why you're doing it
Yeah.
or just thinking about that first. So like I said, I used to do it for more of appearances, body composition, going on vacation. Oh, I want to look good with my shirt off, blah, blah. Now it's to me, sometimes I have to do this more performance based. Like for jujitsu, I sign up for a competition. It's in 2 months. I'm 10 pounds over. I got to cut this 10 pounds in the next 30 days. Then there's a little bit of motivation behind it for me, because if you step on the scale and you're over, you get eliminated. You can't even fight. So it's this whole, I just trained for 6 weeks. I spent money to sign up for this competition. And because I couldn't control my eating, you know, I'm this guy at the competition. So that will drive me through the first couple days. That really uncomfortable spot. And then I'll get into a little bit better place, like mentally. And then it's just, we're halfway through, one more week left, and then it gets a little bit easier.
Yeah. Here's my thing with it. I think the first time I did it, it was like hugging a cactus for 30 days. Yeah. And now it's not. I mean, at the first 7 days, I know, expecting it, that it's going to feel a particular way. It's like when you're running a mile with someone the first time, and then they know where the mile route is, but then you don't. So it just hurts even more. That's what it's like the first time you do this 30 days. And guys, I'm speaking from experience because I've done this multiple times throughout the years in fitness. Now it doesn't feel like much. But at the very beginning, if you decide to do a 30-day fat loss diet, it's emotionally painful. Primarily because you start to realize, wait, my entire family eats this way. Oh man, when I have coffee with my friends, I'm eating a cookie. Like, you start noticing these differences, and then you're having these internal battles. But then the second time you do it, the third time you do it, you start to expect it. And that expectation becomes peaceful. Like, you already know it's coming. And in fact, sometimes you embrace it. And then when it doesn't happen, you're just like, oh, this is weird. So I agree. Like, that first 7 days is painful. And then the next 7 days after that, you're like, oh, I'm kind of in the zone. You get this level of flow state that's unreal. Just mentally, I get into this really creative state. And then after the 30 days, you're like, wait, maybe I should do this for longer. So people don't talk about that. After the 30 days, you feel really good. Sorry, guys. This is why we do these 30-minute versions. But after the 30 days, I'm like, man, I kind of want to do it for another 20. I kind of want to. People don't talk about that primarily because you feel good and you look good, right? And then number two, your energy is just like through the roof. So I do it for 30 days, but for some reason I always get pulled into another extra 10 or an extra 20.
Dang.
It's really weird. I don't go quite
I don't
bingey
go
all of a sudden.
Yeah, I don't go back, or I try not to go back to binging. But I do like hard stops.
Yeah.
And because it's drastic.
Yeah.
And like some of the other stuff we'll talk about in a second, like I want to be able to get back to the stuff that I'm missing out on, like the strength gains and things like that. So I do want to get back to it. But every time you do it, like we were saying, like it gets easier every time you do it, because you learn something. Like you just learn every single time, like what worked, what didn't. And then you're kind of like refining your process every single time. So that's why it just keeps getting easier. So the first one is going to be like your dry run, and it's going to be tough. And then each time you learn something a little bit new, you apply it, and then it's not as hard. And then that's why I could see you going, 30 days, 45 days, 60 days. All of a sudden it's like, how long can I do this for?
And it's just fun seeing your body change. You're like, dang, I got an ab. I got a striation on the forearm. Like, my chest looks different. And I think those are the moments where you start to really just ride that wave longer. I'm not saying that you should ride the wave. It's just an experience that I've had every time I cut, right? So one experience that I do notice a lot of times is my injuries start to increase if I prolong it. And this is just from honesty. And it's primarily probably because I'm working so much and I'm producing so much energy, and I'm not taking in enough to repair. So what I mean by injuries, it's not like catastrophic injuries. It's like it starts to become like a bicep ache or a chest ache or an elbow ache. And then sometimes it's a hamstring pull. And that's why I don't do it as long. The moment I start to manifest these injuries, that's when I'm like, I'm good. I need to start eating again and start training more of what it matches.
Yeah, because I probably from what you said too is like you get this like almost like false sense of energy.
Yeah.
Like you have the energy, but then that always equates to like, oh, I can do more.
Exactly.
But it's a fine line.
It is, yeah.
Because now you're running basically on E every day, just making sure you can make it, to work and back and on E and only putting in a gallon at a time, you run the risk of running out of gas at some point.
Really quick.
So that's why it's like, let's just make sure that, you are being safe. And I think the training side of things, that's why I said don't do anything new, is like, let's just think of it as like we're maintaining the fitness, just making sure we don't get hurt, that we feel good. And then we could push it once we kind of get out of this drastic calorie deficit that we're talking about.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the details. Like the actual meals. Like, what does these meals look like? Because people are probably going to be kind of like, what is the meals? Can I download the PDF kind of thing?
Yeah.
Right. What are like? Are you variety all the time, or do you have some pretty staple versions of what you eat?
I'm pretty staple as far as just like I could eat the same meal every day and be okay with it.
Let's send it.
Dinner is usually where, because remember, if I'm cutting out breakfast, I'm fasting in the morning. It's super easy to eat the same lunch every single time. Dinner, and that's because I'm usually around more family for dinner. That's when it does get a little bit tough. But that's kind of what we're talking about, pushing through. But for me, it's got to be easily digestible foods, because I'm the type of person that I could just, I'm 215 right now. Like, I can hold a lot of food in my stomach.
Right.
So if I could sit here and have a very like a low calorie meal, which would just be maybe some lean beef and some vegetables, but I could eat enough of it or enough vegetables where I could step on the scale and like gain 3 pounds.
Yeah.
And like, that's when you're going through this, you don't want to see that, right? You don't want to see the scale going up at all. Even though you're in a calorie deficit, that could play with my mind sometimes.
Do you even look at the scale during these 30 days?
I do.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't. Yeah.
I do. And I probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't. But I like to see the fluctuations.
Yeah.
Because they're really drastic for me.
They are, yeah. For me, it's massively drastic in a day.
Yeah, I'm talking like I could gain 9 pounds. Like, I weigh myself in the morning, I weigh myself at night. It's like a 9-pound difference. And then the next morning I lose like 10 pounds.
100%.
And I'm just like, it's crazy. But I think it makes me feel like more secure, where I'm just like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I just gained 9 pounds today.
I think it's
I'm going to lose 10 tomorrow.
It's a 300-pound trauma.
It is.
That's still on there.
It is. And I have that.
Yeah.
I definitely have that too, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's, and it's not like every single day.
Yeah.
I just like to do morning and night. But that's why, if I can, and this is where, like, you brought up that question, like, if we were to have a competition, I can get pretty drastic with it. Yeah. And sometimes I've had to do this where I'm not losing as much weight as I thought, and I'm pretty close out to the competition, where I will do not a liquid diet, but I will go extremely digestible.
Yeah.
Where like, I remember one time I was getting pretty close, and like for a week, my meals were a protein shake, a couple of almonds, and some rice cakes.
Yeah.
Because I could digest that like this.
Interesting.
And it's just less food sitting in my stomach, and I could see the scale go down really fast if I do that.
That's super interesting.
So when I get real drastic with it, it's basically, I call it 1 meal a day with a fork.
Wow.
And that's dinner.
Wow.
So it can go.
That's like.
It can go really drastic. It can go no breakfast, shake, rice cake. If I need training, the rice cake, sometimes I cut it out completely. It could just be a shake. And there's tons of water going on with this too.
Yeah, I forgot about that. We're drinking a gallon of water.
A ton of water.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable.
And making sure you have electrolytes too. Just making sure you're.
You having coffee on this?
Yeah.
Okay,
tons.
I'm having coffee breakfast.
Tons. Like, even more than I normally. I'm a big coffee guy. This is even more.
Without the cream, black.
Oh, yeah. Always black.
Okay.
Because, like I said, it cuts my hunger. So sometimes I'll have like a meal, like if I have lunch and I know it's not sufficient, like I'm starving, I'll have a coffee after the meal, and that will kind of like pump my brakes a little bit.
Yeah. Coffee's like my dessert. And then like sparkling water becomes my dessert. I actually buy more of those.
Yeah, look at this right here.
During this sparkling water. Yeah.
It makes me feel full.
It's
because I'm
interesting.
bloated.
Yeah, maybe that's what it
It's like,
is.
it's not a, I don't even know. It's not like a good feeling, but
Yeah.
it makes me feel full.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's like, I just need to be like occupied.
Mm-hmm.
So these help.
Sparkling
Sparkling
water is a
waters.
game changer for me. If it's
Um,
almost like you're drinking soda, but
yeah,
you're not,
yeah. And
right? So
even getting real deep into it, like a diet soda,
yeah.
like just something that's like makes me feel like I'm having sugar, but I'm not. Like
Yeah.
those are like my secret weapons,
Yeah.
or Zevia if you want to be a little bit
Yeah.
healthier or on that side. But
For
like
sure. Yeah.
this is the time to kind of break out the
Mm-hmm.
like the secret weapons. So like
Yeah.
if I'm having that sweet tooth and I'm like, yo, I just want something sweet, like drinking a diet soda makes me
Uh-huh.
like, okay, all right, I just tasted something sweet. I can get over
Exactly.
this.
And guys, keep in mind, like when we're losing body fat, we're not getting to like the bodybuilder level 3%.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
if you're trying to get 3% tactics here, this is not the one to listen
No,
to.
no.
This is like I could actually get down to less than 10% with this particular nutrition.
Yeah,
If I wanted to go beyond that, I'd probably have to cut out way more things
yeah.
than I
And you
want.
got to look at
And you got to be
a
counting a little bit.
year
Hmm.
of a grind.
Yeah. This is just me going from like
Yeah.
14% to like 9.
Yeah, this is like
Yeah.
looking in the mirror and being like, "Uh-oh,
Like, dang,
holidays just
shit.
caught up to me. Like,
Yeah.
what can I do?"
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just kind of using those little tactics, not for me, just to be able to see the scale go down. Very lightweight meals,
Yeah.
shakes, like I said, rice cakes, almonds, and then um, just trying to control myself at dinner
Yeah.
using some of these like sparkling waters or something like that just to kind of hold me over.
Yeah.
Um, and then a tactic that I need to keep working at every single day is eating slow.
Yeah.
That's like one of my biggest battles. And especially when you're in this deficit and you're hungry
Enjoy it. You
and
just
it's
try crushing
my
it. Yeah.
first meal with a fork that thing goes down in like 3 minutes and then I'm sitting there and I'm like I'm starving still.
Yeah. And you haven't
Um
even let it set in
yeah.
because it takes about 15
Yeah.
minutes. It's actually a really good trick, guys. If you want to feel like you're always hungry really fast, as soon as you finish the meal, set a clock for 15 minutes and
Mhm.
see if you really are. A lot of times, once that 15 minutes hits, you're like, oh, I'm actually not
Yeah.
that hungry. It's really interesting. It just takes time to
Yeah.
digest.
And you can notice it with my 9-month-old. The
Yeah.
second his bottle's done, he's screaming his head off.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like
15
he
minutes
calms
later.
down, and then he's like,
Huh.
"Oh, I'm not hungry." It's like,
'Cause
yeah,
that's,
you didn't give a second to
yeah.
think if you're, and that's what
Yeah.
happens to me when I'm in these like huge deficits.
Mm-hmm.
I am just starving uncontrollably, and if I don't like sit and think or move a little bit slower, like I could easily convince myself
Mm-hmm.
to go get more food.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I'll train really hard tomorrow.
This is
And like,
where I think like babies are easier
yeah, yeah,
than teenagers because they only need they're either like hungry or they're tired,
hmm
right? Or they're really sick. But if you can just solve those two
yeah,
things, it's like it's actually not that bad. And then when they start becoming like a little speed demon and they start having personalities, you don't know why they're having
oh,
tantrums
yeah,
now,
absolutely.
right? So
And oh, you just hit another one right there. When you're going through a 30-day like grueling change,
yeah.
make sure you're sleeping well
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
because
that's huge. That's a huge.
if you're not sleeping well, it's very, very difficult
Yeah.
to kind of like keep up with that willpower because you're going to be irritable. You're going to be less social, like you said. Like you're going to be, wanting to convince yourself to eat. And it's just, it's when you're tired and when you're underslept,
Yes.
it's way easier to kind of cave in.
I'm glad you brought that up. I actually offset most of my meals are at the end of the night.
Mm.
So I'm eating most of my protein, most of my vegetables. So by the time I'm done finishing it, I'm like
Yeah,
I get
yeah,
the
yeah.
meat sleepiness, right?
Yeah, and
Right?
it used to
And
be
you're
like
out.
I've heard people say it as a joke, but like sometimes you could eat sleep for dinner.
Yeah.
Like if it's 8 o'clock, and you haven't eaten dinner yet, and you're like, I could either eat dinner or just go to bed.
Yeah.
Again in this
Yeah.
very drastic 30 days. Now you're looking at that 24-hour fast idea.
Yeah.
It's like if you're real close to bed and
Yeah.
you're just, it's not that. Have a couple flavored seltzers and
Yeah.
try and go to sleep.
Okay. Yeah.
And you will, and me, like I don't wake up as hungry as I was the night before.
Mm. That's true. Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad thing
Yeah.
to add in there.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to give you guys mine, and I'm
Mhm.
super boring.
Yeah.
All right. So my lunch is always a chicken salad. It's either like a Caesar version or like a bell pepper version salad or it could be like a Southwest version without the corn and like all the other stuff. It's just, I like to vary that, but it's always chicken. Here's what's crazy. What people are going to think that's crazy. It's always fried chicken too.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
You're like, what?
Well,
You're getting shredded with fried chicken? I just
no
love it.
carbs.
I mean, there's still carbs on it,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
it's
like breaded fried chicken?
not breaded fried chicken.
Oh,
No.
you're going. Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's either that or grilled chicken, but it actually I think it has more fat than the carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So and I like things when they're crispy. And you could air fry it. You could probably get even leaner, but I'm telling you, I actually get lean just from that.
Really?
I know, it's crazy.
Renaming the podcast to Get Shredded
With
while
fried
eating fried chicken.
But dude, you put the salad on, you put the fried chicken, you cut it up in pieces.
It's delicious.
It's money. Yeah. So I do that Monday through Sunday. Rarely changes, right? And then in dinner, it's always, my wife is really good at this. She makes vegetables and protein of some sort.
Mhm.
But if I had my ideal and I had my own personal chef, I would probably have like green beans, peppers, or asparagus, and then steak. Right? That's it.
Mhm.
I would have that every dinner if I had that. But then sometimes you don't. So you just I really just eat vegetables and whatever protein we have that she's made. And it's either like beef, chicken, some type of turkey meatball.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah, that sounds like me.
That's that's for 30 days straight.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I like to do is sparkling water at the end of the night. When I'm in these deficits, I like to enjoy it. So one thing that I've learned over the course of those days where I would do these massive fat losses is you actually don't have to be miserable the whole time. So I find ways to make this exciting. So I actually buy myself sparkling water Monday through Friday, right? And how is it still calling? I'm on airplane mode. It's hacks. And I also, in the morning, I have my coffee.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll actually have coffee also right at lunchtime. And I'm still fine, right? So now you guys have the idea. I feel like you don't need a PDF for what we eat.
No.
That's how easy. Oh, and also do a protein shake.
Yeah.
Because again, I need to up my protein. Typically, I don't have protein shakes. People think I actually have protein shakes. I only have protein shakes when I try to lose weight or like lose body fat because I need to increase my protein count.
Yeah.
And I can't eat 5
it's a
pounds
tool
of chicken.
for sure, and it's a tool. Like I said, you break out these little extra tools when you need them.
Yeah.
I would much rather eat a meal than have a protein shake, but
Mhm.
if I could, and then I get another 32 ounces of water
Mhm.
if I use water, and also if it's a very boring protein shake.
Yeah,
During this time, it's water and a scoop of whey.
for sure.
It's but then the more water in there, yeah. But I'll add those in, and then if I'm really hungry, just another shake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about after the 30 days.
Mhm.
Do you go eat a box of pizza? What's
I
your
used
protocol?
I used to.
Yeah, me too. I used to. No, I don't.
And
Tell me why you don't now.
because there's nothing more frustrating than going hard for 30 days, losing whatever amount of pounds you have, and then I mentioned before how easily I could put on body fat, but just step on the scale and there'd be more weight. I can go 30 days, lose 15 pounds, and then go out to binge to celebrate and put on 16 pounds in 2 days.
I know. It's
and like
unreal.
there is nothing worse than that. So it's trying my hardest to not do that. Like that's the absolute worst. It's and then you don't want to do it again. But then you sit there and you think it's like, okay, well, I didn't have to go to all you can eat sushi and then get ice cream afterwards and then go to brunch the next day to celebrate. Like, what am I even celebrating? Like the weight loss, that's the celebration. Like, it's not like I'm the 3% bodybuilder who just took 6 months out of his life and stepped on stage and they can go out and celebrate. Like, we're just talking you
It's
know,
just normal dudes trying to
it's
get lean
yeah,
just for
normal dudes
fun.
trying to get
Yeah.
shredded. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing like of course like I can get some a meal that tastes good that I haven't had in a while, but
Mm,
I used to just go so overboard, like I'm free,
yeah.
and that just kills me. It
Mm.
sends me right back.
Yeah, I think this is like the biggest mistake people make when they do the long
Hmm.
fasts, one, or also they do these big body fat losses for 30 days is their next meal as soon as it's like the worst meal.
Yeah,
And what I do now is as soon as I'm done with that 30 day or something that's like extremely challenging for me metabolically, the first meal is like the healthiest version meal that I could think of, right? Normally it's a steak and vegetables for me still. I don't go right into it. If I wanted to go up and beyond, maybe I'll go to Korean barbecue.
mm,
Have a little bit of rice, but then have like as much meat as I can because you have all this
yeah,
variety, right? So it's changed for me in the past because I used to go in these like 30 days with no fruit, no carbs, and then I'd eat something pretty bad and my stomach would just be destroyed,
yeah.
right?
It's like why not? How
Yeah,
about introduce a fruit
yeah. And what's really
first?
interesting? It's there's science on this now where it's like you clean up your stomach and now it's like it's able to absorb things the way it's supposed to.
Yeah,
And for years I've been my stomach has been so inflamed that it didn't want to take anything in.
yeah,
Chronically inflamed, and then the moment you throw the exact same poisonous things in your
yeah, yeah,
system, it actually reacts like the way it's supposed to. So it's very common to see my athletes experience that. They'll go really really clean, and then they introduce something like something bad like fast food. And they're like, "Why do I feel so sick?" It's like
hmm,
because your body's actually cleaner. It can actually absorb it. For a while, it just kind of was barricading itself so it couldn't absorb anything. And that's like the common
yeah,
thing that I've seen for myself, but I also a lot of my clients, especially like, am I messed up? Am I lactose
yeah,
intolerant? It's like,
yeah.
it's like, no, you're just Jack in the Box
Yeah.
intolerant now,
And then it's
man.
like, no, and that's like what you
Yeah.
used to feel like all the time.
Your body
But
was
that
just
was
so
your
inflamed,
norm.
which is crazy.
Yeah. Oh, and that's
So,
the worst too. Like if you come off of this and you actually get sick,
yeah.
and that's the worst. Because then you're really gonna go back to where you started. Like if you
Yeah.
actually get sick and you can't progress after that, 30 days.
Yeah.
That's the worst too. But yeah, I used to be like that, but every time I do it, it's less
Yeah.
and less.
Yeah. So what I do now after the 30 days is I'll start introducing carbs again,
Hmm.
but not an overwhelming amount. Just like what you said, I'd probably carb cycle, meaning like on the days where I'm having much more intense workouts, I'll have a higher carb content on that. Or I just have more carbs on the weekends and just have like stick to the plan. Monday through Friday. Actually, it's not big carbohydrate influx right
Yeah.
away for me. You might as well ride how lean you can
Yeah,
get for as
right.
long as you
So
can.
yours is more like instead of framing it as like a 30-day
Mhm.
challenge, yours is more like 45.
Yeah,
And
just yeah, yeah,
the zero carbs is 30, but like you're still giving yourself like 2 weeks to kind of like phase out of it and be
yeah.
more normal instead of what sounds like we both used to do where it was like
30
on day
on, 30 off.
31, I am like just
Yeah.
going crazy.
If you guys are in for that, I
Yeah.
would highly recommend not to do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It lets
it's
you let
painful.
yourself down.
Yeah,
You really do. Um, because it's just like, wow, all that hard work is gone because I just
exactly.
one day turned into 1 week and
Hmm.
now I'm back.
Yeah. All right. So I want to end on some tactics here. So if you guys are going to do this for 30 days, there's a couple of things that I want you to probably track, so that way you can get inspired to do it again. Number one is probably like if I was to do this the first time, I would take a photo of myself,
Hmm.
right? And again, I'm not a big scale person, but if you are a scale person, maybe track that too, just to kind of see what it's like. But if you're like me and you're in this state, you're gonna be very disappointed because in a day you can fluctuate 10 to 15 pounds, and you're like, why am I even doing that? I'm just gonna be miserable. Like I fluctuate 10 to 15
Oh yeah.
pounds depending on the workout, depending on what I eat. It's extremely frustrating, so I just don't anymore. But maybe at the beginning, if you're 20 or 30 pounds, you'll probably see some weight loss. And then another thing that I would track is how you feel.
Hmm.
I think people don't track this, and I think they should, because it's nice to see that 7 days in you're like normal, and then you're like, wait, how come I feel really good? Oh wait, I feel even more excited, or I just feel miserable. I think all of those things are really important to document, because if you can start planning for those on your next 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
So if my first 7 days are going to be a crapshoot, I'm not going to plan anything else that's stressful on top of that. In fact, I'm probably going to plan some things that are more joyful. I was like, Keith, let's go do a podcast. Keith, let's go play basketball. Like, I would put things that are joyful for the first 7 days so it can offset that emotional turmoil that I consistently experience every time I do this.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I track a
Yeah.
ton, and that's why it's like I do step on the scale, but I'm also the weirdo who loves spreadsheets, and I'll put a. I also this is exactly what I do. Morning weight, just to see, because I like to see the fluctuations, or at least I see the trends, because when I put them in the spreadsheet, you can see the trends. I use the Aura Ring tracker just
Nice.
to actually get like quote unquote real data.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I wake up, I'm like, I feel terrible, and then the ring says you have a great score, or vice versa. I'm like, oh, I feel great, and the ring says you had a bad. So I like to get an objective measure and a subjective measure. So it's ring score, and then on 0 to 10, just how do I feel? And
Yeah.
you can line those up, and most of the times they're pretty similar. But as long as I collect that data, like that's all I really need.
Yeah.
And you could just look back at it. I do like a weekly review and just look back at it, see the trends in the weight, but most importantly, see the trends in like how I feel. And exactly what you said. You could,
Now, oh gosh, because you're so logical. I mean, we have the
Yeah,
feeling
yeah,
side. We've
yeah.
implemented that.
Yeah.
That's new to us. One more thing that I would do, and I do this sometimes when I do crazy 30-day challenges, is I'll make 30 circles on a piece of paper, and I'll put it on my fridge. And every time I finish it, I color it.
Yeah. Feels good. Feels good to color it.
Feels good to color it. Check mark it. For some reason, it just like, it feels like you're making serious progress and you're feeling like you're accomplished. So that's another thing that I would track. What day am I in?
Yeah.
You know, and I just do little circles, and you can make it fun. You can make it into like this quest line of 30 days, and there's Korean barbecue at the very top. Like, make it fun for yourself.
Well, I did on the fridge one time for Chris and I did a sticker system.
Dude, it's fun.
She had like yellow stickers, and I had like red, and you like put every day, or you did like it's ridiculous, but it really is like I do it all on my phone now, just because I set up like a Apple Notes thing or whatever. But just that idea of like checking in with yourself. I know some people, like, I don't do this. It's just not really my personality, but you can leverage social media to your advantage, because some people will be like, I'm on a challenge. And
brilliant, yeah.
it gets embarrassing if you're posting about your challenge and like 4 days in you stop posting.
Yeah.
It's so if you obviously don't do that if that's not your thing, but like having someone that knows what you're doing to hold the accountability, because it's very easy to like start one of these by yourself and then give up by yourself.
Yeah. So one of the things that Nick and I are doing right now is we're sharing our 75 hard. So you're 100%. Like, I agree with you. Creating some level of accountability, whether it's public or like a homie.
Yeah.
I actually do better when it's a homie that I know that will do it.
Yeah. And because they'll tell you, like,
they'll tell you
honestly.
But then there's this, like, I know he's so driven, is so hard that I would never fail it. But when there's like 3 or 4 people that are kind of like lackadaisical, it's easy for me to just like, well, she didn't do it. Why I ain't gotta do it?
Mine is what I said before. Like, I don't usually reach out to a person or anything like that, just because mine is if I don't make weight for competition, I'm that guy, and my team and everyone on my team's like, this guy couldn't cut a couple pounds. But like that, but it's the idea of it. So that's why I know some people do like a 75 hard, post it every day, but it's just know I'm noticing if you post for 7 days and then you disappear.
100%. So guys, if you're listening to this, this is not like this is what you should do. This is what I do. And this is what Keith does. And it's like, it's forever changed. And I'm telling you, it's also not perfect. It could probably be a lot better, and it's constant. But keep in mind, when we do these 30 days, it's 1 month out of the 12.
Mhm.
Maybe sometimes even only just 21 days. Like it's actually not like this. I don't think it's sustainable, one. But it's extremely effective and it can be extremely inspiring, especially if you just want to see some quick results. So then that motivates you. So
I got one thing to add on there too, because I did this recently where Royce just said, "Don't the 30 days, don't do it. 20, like it could be 21 days. Like, why not just one day?
one day just solid, yeah.
Just one day, don't eat carbs.
Mm,
And at the end of the night, you're gonna be like, all right, that wasn't the best day of my life, but I'm
yeah,
alive. I got a workout in, whatever. Like,
yeah.
and it's almost just proving, like, it's proving to you that you could do it for one day. And obviously, if you could do it for one day, you could do it for
Yeah.
30 days. But like, I did carnivore, real carnivore.
Yeah, for one day.
No, for 2 weeks.
Oh gosh.
2
Did it
weeks.
stem from one day try?
I did it for, I tried one day
No
and I was like,
way.
this is not that bad. I did it for 2 weeks
Yeah.
just to cut the holiday weight.
Yeah, and it worked.
Yeah, and it was like, I definitely don't want to adopt that as my
Yeah.
diet, but I did it for 2 weeks and it was just based off I did it for a day. And now because I'm currently doing it, when I move into carb cycling, those 0 carb days, those low carb days, it's not as crazy because I'm like, I just did it for 2 weeks. It's not a big deal. I could do it for today. Tomorrow, I
Yeah.
could have a little more carbs. So
I
it's just
like
more
that.
of those, like, just
Yeah.
prove to yourself that you can do it. I
Yeah.
think if you've never done anything hard dieting wise,
This is
probably not the best idea to be like
I'm gonna do it
75
30
hard.
days. Yeah, yeah. Or 30 days no carbs like Royce
Yeah,
is
yeah.
doing.
Just prove to yourself that you can do it for a day, and then take on a bigger challenge.
There's a video that my wife and I are doing because she just finished a book called Tiny Habits, where essentially tiny habits can lead to massive results, and you just created an example for it. And I think if someone is like, this is too extreme for me, I think what you just talked about is probably going to be more impactful than what we're promoting. Like, just do one day where it's like, you know what? I'm just going to do one carb.
That's it.
Right?
Just one day.
Well, one carb for one day. I just want to experience that. And I think that is a very healthier way, a more sustainable way. And if you want to write it out for 2 weeks, you can, or you could write it out for 3 days.
And that's why it's easy for us to go back to these things because I did it last year.
Yeah.
I could do it again. I did it 3 months ago. I could do it again. Like, it's just that, like, we build confidence over time. 100%. Then it's really easy for us to, like, keep going back and doing this over and over again because we've already done it before.
Yeah.
It's just when you've never done it before, you don't have the confidence.
Yeah.
And then it could be easy to fail.
I love it. All right, let's end with this. This is a new tradition because I'm a collector of questions. And I think getting the right question or just receiving the right question can completely change your life. And it doesn't necessarily have to be health involved, nutrition involved. But what is the most recent question that you were like, oh my gosh, that's a game-changing question? Or a question that you received in your life that's really been a guiding principle for you?
All right. Took me a minute to kind of think about it. And I think I was too caught up in, like, it has to be this, like, amazing question that like changed my life, whatever. But since I have a 9-month-old, I've been kind of like just consuming more, content, books about, like, just being a parent. And it was just the very simple question of, like, what type of dad do you want to be? And I know, like, that's so simple. And I thought about it, like, all throughout my wife's pregnancy and things like that. But it was more of like talking about like a specific example where I have a son. So when he starts to get older, it's like I see, and I'm not judging anyone, but I see so many parents drop their kids off to work out or go play a sport, and or they leave.
Yeah.
Or
they're just watching.
They're just watching, and they're so out of shape that they can't, like, do it with them. Sort of like that sort of idea. And then there's some parents that are, like, really pushing their kids in sports or academics to, like, a really high level. And it's just like, they're not the example. And that kind of idea, like that's what I've been thinking a lot more. Like, you have kids that, parents, they want their kid to go D1 and they're 100 pounds overweight.
I've seen that. I've
And,
seen those parents.
and that's,
And sometimes it can work. It just seems just
yeah.
like, ah.
Yeah, they must have like I think that just starting off with like being the example, and then whatever plays out, that plays out. But just envisioning, I used to worry kind of about like this moment of being like a first time father of like a newborn. Like I got to start thinking like in 10 years from now, what type of parent do I want to be?
So
And that's
good,
been
guys.
changing my perspective on things.
Guys, write that down, answer it for yourself. Maybe comment below how you would want to approach that question, especially if you are a parent or want to be a future parent. Answer that for me. So, listen, if you're trying to lose weight, but you're just frustrated because you just can't seem to see any results, we would love to help you out. Now, we've been helping thousands of our athletes over the course of a decade by crafting personalized programs that are not only sustainable, but also effective. Now, if you're ready to transform your health, click on the show notes below, book a call with one of our coaches. We'd love to help you out. Now back to the show. Peace. Guys, if you like this episode, Keith and I did an episode. This was a weight loss inspiration series of how you lost 100 pounds. So if you guys want to see that video, it's pretty cool. It's going to be up here. I'll see you guys later. Peace.